10 o'clock news on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Jeanelle Slade.
And I'm Jay Cohn. Montana Senator Steve Daines could be the deciding vote on whether the Republican tax plan passes the Senate.
The Senate tax reform bill could head to a vote as soon as Thursday, but as it stands now, Daines could be among those voting against the measure.
Daines, a Republican, drawing national attention after he posted on Twitter today about a conversation he had over the weekend with President Trump.
Daines said the two worked through concerns about the bill, but still, Bloomberg Politics reports a Daines staffer confirms the Republican senator will vote the measure down in its current form. Daines reportedly believes the tax cuts do not benefit Main Street businesses. In
a statement this afternoon, Daines says he doesn't want large corporations to gain the competitive edge over smaller businesses. If the senator votes no, he joined two other Republicans in dissenting. It will take only 3 Republican no votes to stop the bill.
Meanwhile, Democratic Senator Jon Tester is also still a no on the bill. He says, quote, the Senate bill as currently drafted saddles our kids and grandkids with more crushing debt by adding nearly $1.5 trillion to the deficit. And it raises taxes on Montana families, forces cuts to Medicare, and benefits wealthy out-of-staters at the expense of hardworking Montanans. Well, it is a big week for the White House and its push for tax reform. Republicans hoping for a procedural vote in the Senate as early as Wednesday.
But a controversial comment by President Trump today is threatening to overshadow the GOP plan. The president accused of using a racial slur today in front of a Native American group. CNN's Jeff Zeleny reports.
President Trump is dusting off his salesman hat tonight, trying to salvage the Republican tax plan facing a vote in the Senate. It's a critical week for the Trump presidency, with his only major legislative victory hanging in the balance.
How's the tax bill going, sir?
I think the tax bill is going very well. We had a meeting on it today. It's going to be a tremendous tax cut.
And a critical month ahead for Republicans, with a year-end spending bill looming to keep the government open.
I think the tax bill is doing very well, and I think the Republicans are going to be very proud of it.
But the White House and Republican leaders are still scrambling to make changes to the $1.5 trillion tax package in hopes of winning over at least 6 Senate Republicans who aren't sold on the bill. Senator Ron Johnson has said he'll vote no. Senator Steve Daines is opposed to the bill as it currently stands. Susan Collins, Bob Corker, and Jeff Flake also are voicing concerns, with Senator John McCain perhaps the biggest wild card of all.
If we win, we'll get some Democratic senators joining us. If we don't
so far, that seems unlikely. But in the Oval Office today, while honoring Navajo Indians who fought in World War II, Mr. Trump made a crack at one of his Democratic foes, Senator Elizabeth Warren, who he has branded Pocahontas.
You were here long before any of us were here. Although we have a representative in Congress who they say was here a long time ago. They call her Pocahontas.
The culturally insensitive remark may have been lost on those in the Oval Office, but not on Warren.
It is deeply unfortunate that the President of the United States cannot even make it through a ceremony honoring these heroes without having to throw out a racial slur.
Later at the White House briefing, Press Secretary Sarah Sanders defended the president and said it wasn't a racial slur. She took aim at Warren, who faced controversy during her Senate race over claiming Native American heritage.
I think that Senator Warren was very offensive when she lied about something specifically to advance her career. I don't understand why no one's asking about that question and why that isn't constantly covered.
All this as the Alabama Senate race still hangs over Washington. The president would not say whether he would campaign in the state.
Mr. President, will you go to Alabama?
Sanders said the president would not go to Alabama, despite embracing Moore's candidacy last week. The controversy has reopened a debate from when the Access Hollywood tape surfaced before the election, with Mr. Trump bragging about the assault of women.
And when you're a star, they let you do it.
While briefly apologizing for it at the time,
I said it, I was wrong, and I apologize.
Trump has been telling people the tape was a fake, the New York Times reported, as he explained why he believes Moore's denials from women accusers in Alabama. Sanders pushed back on that today.
Look, I said that he'd already addressed it and that we didn't have any updates to that. I said what he didn't like and what he found troubling were the accounts that are being reported now.
But what counts are being reported now that weren't reported last year? What counts are you talking about?
the ones that are current that he's questioning.
And so it goes. Elsewhere, Montana Congressman Greg Gianforte and his staff now facing a cease and desist order by the reporter that he assaulted last May. The attorney for reporter Ben Jacobs of The Guardian has sent a letter to Gianforte demanding that he and his staff cease and desist from the use of any further false and defamatory statements concerning the congressman's assault of Jacobs. Earlier this month, when Gallatin County released its records of the assault, the investigators stated that Gianforte initially tried to mislead authorities about the nature of the incident. In response, Gianforte spokesman Travis Hall issued a statement saying that, quote, no one was misled. But Guardian attorney Jeffrey Gent says that Hall's statement contradicts a letter from Gianforte himself that specifically says Jacobs did not initiate any physical contact. Gianforte pleaded guilty to that May 17th assault and publicly apologized to Jacobs. The judge ordered Gianforte to community service, anger management classes, and a $385 fine.
Despite opposition, there will be a bar near the new West End Billings Middle School. This after the Billings City Council approved plans to relocate the business tonight.
Q2's Dustin Kleeman joining us with details on the decision and why some residents were on hand to speak out against it. Dustin.
Good evening, Jay and Jeanelle. Neighborhood residents worried of the possible crime increase if the Den Bar and Casino relocated to the West End, less than 2 blocks from the Ben Steele Middle School. The commercial designated location is along Grand Avenue, and you can see the distance between it and Ben Steele Middle School. It will be built next to Albertson's grocery store that's planned. Currently, the Den resides at the West Park Promenade, a spot that it's held for 5 decades. The city requires separation of any all liquor licensed businesses to be at least 600 feet from schools, playgrounds, and churches. The Den will be 1,100 feet from property line to property line. Councilmember Ryan Sullivan, he made a plea to his fellow council to reject the idea.
There's an opportunity to say no to the rapid spread of casinos. And I can tell you that Billings residents, while some go to them, by and large, the people that live in these areas don't like them and don't want them and want to get away from them. Stop the spread of casinos. They've hit Shiloh. They're far enough west when they hit Shiloh, and they're all up and down Main Street, and that's a good place for them to be located.
And the final vote tonight was 6-4 vote in favor of that relocation. Jeanelle.
All right, thanks so much, Dustin. Well, the State Workers' Compensation Fund has gone to court to block a $30 million transfer of fund assets meant to help balance the state budget. But now it appears the fund may withdraw that lawsuit. MTN's Mike Dennison has the story.
2 weeks ago, a special session of the legislature passed several measures to fill a $227 million hole in the state budget. Part of that package is a bill transferring $30 million from the reserves of the State Work Comp Fund into the state treasury. The day after lawmakers left town, however, the state fund filed suit to block that transfer, arguing the money is for use only for work comp claims related to worker injuries.
Once it is established that the legislature can legislate and take assets through whatever means they choose, then that means that there's no protection to the assets of Montana State Fund for the very purpose for which the premium was paid, and that's workers' benefits.
But since then, Governor Steve Bullock has appointed 2 new members to the State Fund Board, and that board has called an emergency meeting for Wednesday to consider withdrawing the suit. Bullock made it clear Monday that he doesn't think the lawsuit should continue.
I don't know that it's the most productive way when the legislature's passed this for the state fund to be suing the state of Montana. I think what they ought to do is follow the law that the legislature passed.
The State Fund is a quasi-governmental agency that writes work comp insurance for 26,000 Montana businesses. Supporters of the $30 million transfer say it won't hurt the financial condition of the fund. But State Fund customers like State Representative Greg Hertz of Polson say the fund board should hold fast and not withdraw the lawsuit.
If we're going to take $30 million out of Montana State Fund, what happens if we have some catastrophic event or the stock market has a major correction? There's a lot of issues that could happen that could impact the reserves of State Fund, and this just is not a good idea.
Hertz says he'll attend Wednesday's State Fund Board meeting to make his arguments. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
All right, thank you, Mike. Turning to weather now. That gusty wind this morning, Bob, sure brought us out of the holiday weekend.
Yeah, that was a very strong cold front that moved through, and not only was it very windy at Billings, it was kind of breezy all over the place. Let me show you some of our peak wind gusts out of that storm this morning. Places like over there by Livingston, 2 miles southwest of Livingston, had a 60-mile-per-hour wind. No big surprise there. Meanwhile, 13 miles southwest of Graycliff, they had 58-mile-per-hour winds. 17 miles south of Fort Smith had a 55-mile-per-hour wind. Near Wilsall, it was 54 miles per hour. And about 6 miles southwest of Red Lodge had a 53-mile-per-hour. And at the Billings Airport, it was 51-mile-per-hour wind today. Now, those winds continue to move in towards the rest of the Dakotas. We're looking at high pressure moving in tomorrow. It means mostly sunny skies. Temperature's still going to be a little on the chilly side because we just had a cold front move through. We'll have more on that in a few more minutes.
All right, thank you, Bob.
Still to come on tonight's 10 o'clock news. Do you prefer online over in-line? Check out why Cyber Monday continues to gain traction.
Plus, it's all downhill from here. May sound bad, that is, unless you're a skier.
And in sports, Grizz Athletic Director Kent Haslam talks about what he wants in a new head coach. And Scott has the latest on Bobby Hauck.
You're watching MTN News with Jay Cohn and Jeanelle Slade. Storm Tracker weather with Bob McGuire. And sports with Scott Green.